Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's Max Igan. Welcome to the show. Well, a man called Delamere Duveris once said that basic truth can be used as a foundation for a mountain of lies. And if we dig down deep enough in the mountain of lies and bring out that truth to set it on top of the mountain of lies, the entire mountain of lies will crumble under the weight of that one truth. And there is nothing more devastating to a structure of lies than the revelation of the truth upon which the structure of lies was built, because the shock waves of the revelation of the truth reverberate and continue to reverberate throughout the earth for generations to follow, awakening even those people who had no desire to be awakened to the truth. I think that is a wonderful quote, and it shows very strongly the reasons why it is important to keep speaking out and to keep spreading the truth and to helping people understand the true nature of the reality that we are all living in. I have a very special guest on the show today, a man by the name of Dr. Len Horowitz. Dr. Horowitz has a website called lenhorowitz.com. He has numerous websites actually, which I believe are linked to from his main site. You will find a link to his website on the crowhouse.com links page. We're here today to further discuss the swine flu debacle. And so without further ado, I will now present Dr. Leonard Horowitz. Well, welcome to the show. It's a great honour to have you on. There are so many things I'd like to talk to you about. I'd also like to take this opportunity right at the start to thank you for your diligence and for the work that you have done to spread truth to others in the world. I know there's certainly a lot of people here in Australia who are extremely grateful for the contributions that you've made. I guess the first thing and most obvious thing I'd like to talk to you about is this swine flu. What's your take on this flu, Dr. Horowitz? What exactly have you been able to discover about the different varieties that the strain consists of?
Well, the swine flu fright was a psychological operation consisting of publications, press releases that were put out by Novavax Corporation and Centers for Disease Control that implicated in the beginning of the outbreak that it was a combination of swine flu, avian flu, and Spanish flu viruses that had already crossed the species barrier and were affecting humans. And that information was perfectly timed to coincide with a public relations sales initiative that the company and the government contractors at CDC had been basically poised to make a lot of money in, and they were doing that. Their stock at Novavax was skyrocketing, and so it compelled me to research what is going on at these companies. Are these companies implicated in genocide, that is the profiteering off of humanity's suffering, and this whole concept of it being a novel virus composed of the world's three leading most feared viruses was certainly not just grist for a novel, but it was really something more serious in terms of serial murder, serial homicide, mass murder, as well as genocide. So I thought I would investigate it, and lo and behold, when one did that, and one does it even right now, you can go on and you can see that this is exactly what had happened. These people had created a plague. They were involved in creating and loosing some sort of a man-made germ that certainly had all the earmarks of something that was potentially very threatening. So what I did was I came out with, I don't mind telling you the story if you want to have me share that. Is that okay?
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's fine. I mean, this flu seems to have bioweapon written all over it. It really does. I mean, is there any way you think something like this could come about naturally?
No, nothing like this. Nothing like that would be a recombinant of these types of viruses, H5N1 and H1N1, that had been reverse engineered and showed up in a place that these combinations, never showed up before. I mean, nothing ever showed up like that in Mexico before, and it wasn't even in flu season. You know, the reality is that you have to be an idiot, really. And I'm surprised that more reputable investigators don't scream, are not screaming right now. I think it just goes to show you how controlled the mainstream media is and how controlled people's minds are as a result of the control being waged internationally by the news media. And the reality is that these people have to ask a question. Anybody that's concerned about this has to ask the question, what is the statistical probability of this happening versus what is the likelihood and statistical probability that it was man-made and it was loosed. And if anybody has any common sense and scientific prowess, they would ask that question and they would come out with the fact that it's ridiculously remote. I mean, it's almost unfathomable and virtually improbable that a swine flu would combine with an avian flu, would combine with a Spanish flu, would combine with human genetics enough to have a cross-species transfer of the most hideous flu virus in Earth's history, suddenly pop out at the precise time that the Centers for Disease Control and Novavax were publishing their preclinical studies to gain financial support for further studies and vaccinations and to begin promoting the stockpiling of vaccinations by governments around the world, which is a multi-billion-dollar operation, and that the concept that this, what's the statistical probability that this was a laboratory creation is extraordinarily high. And so now just take a look at, if that's the case, which it is, why do we have no one covering the story? Why is it there's no grand juries investigating these people? And I cited those people. In fact, if you go onto YouTube right now and you go to Mexican Flu Special Report by Dr. Len Horowitz, you'll see for 10 minutes a report that within the first 30 hours received nearly 100,000 views, which it was extraordinary. And the reason primarily that that's extraordinary is because we controlled the top spot in Google search on Mexican flu for the 3.5, 4 days. It may still be controlling a high-level spot as far as I know. I'll have to check it again. So there was a lot of people that were witnessing the emperor having no clothes, and I cited the documentation that would compel any serious investigation or investigator to, say, holy smoke, wow, this is pretty intense. And you've got Dr. James Robertson from the UK in charge of the European Economic Union's stockpiling of vaccines and the creator of the proprietary technology to produce these specific types of recombinant viruses. Sending this material, he would have had to have sent this material to the Centers for Disease Control. They obviously sent it to Novavax because Novavax's chief executive in charge of global influenza vaccine research and development is a guy by the name of Rick Bright, Dr. Rick Bright, who used to work at the Centers for Disease Control under the man that sends the viruses around, Dr. Odonis, D-O-N-I-S. And so clearly there is a vaccine pipeline. There's an organization of entrepreneurial scientists that are working in the for-profit sector, with one foot in the for-profit sector, the other in the corporate sector, the other in the NGO or non-governmental organization sector, as humanitarians, because these guys are working for the World Health Organization. At least Robertson is in the UK. And so that means that, they've got one foot in the corporate sector, one foot in the non-governmental sector, and at the same time they got their paycheck from the taxpayers. Americans, obviously, the American taxpayer. UK, I'm sure the government is taking the people's money and funding this particular individual, Dr. Robertson. And so you realize, okay, there's a certain conflict of interest here that the mainstream media and all public health and any legitimate scientist or concerned citizen would absolutely say, hey, what's going on?
Yeah, very much. I mean, the media should be covering all of this. The mainstream media is just hopeless. I mean, this flu outbreak as well, it's turned out to be nowhere near as bad as what was first forth by the media. Do you think that it was like a beta test to try out a virus, or perhaps to try out the new policing and social lockdown mechanisms, or do you think maybe they tried to release it and it failed, or do you think that maybe they even tested a gender-specific virus version of this flu? I've heard that as well. Or do you think it was maybe just a setup to sell vaccines and get people to take these new vaccines, which will probably contain the virus and will serve to weaken people's immune systems very much, or perhaps even a combination of them all? What do you think the whole ploy was with this?
Yeah, I would answer probably C. All the above are likely scenarios, but I think I'll tell you the most disconcerting and the most probable of all the answers